Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Today is Wednesday, March 30th, and we're happy that you all are here. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin with an invocation by Pastor Randy Edwards of Grace Church of Kernersville.
Let's pray. Lord God Almighty, we come to you this evening to pray for and to ask for your wisdom for these elected servants and public officials, that they deliberate the business of our community with skill. We thank you, Lord, for their love for our town, and we pray that you would give them wisdom and skill as they do this work of leading and planning and managing. I ask that you would give them success in their efforts to see their community thrive. Father, would their labor on our behalf this evening be fulfilling to them personally? And would you give them joy in seeing their work bear fruit in blessing others? We thank you for those who work for our town, who govern, oversee our resources, plan for the future, maintain civil order, and maintain our environment. No work is easy. Lord, please bless them as they work and serve. We live in a privileged country and community, and it is easy for us to expect, even demand, the sorts of benefits that other people in other places of the world either do not have or are at this moment having to fight for. Help us to be grateful for our town employees. May we as citizens work diligently to preserve what we have received. We ask that you would have mercy on our law enforcement personnel. Please keep them safe as they do the work of protecting us. Have mercy on our emergency service personnel, our EMTs and firefighters. We thank you for them. We ask that you would protect them as they run towards danger and put themselves in harm's way to rescue those in need. Father, we are grieved to hear yesterday and read this morning of the death of one of our children, Ethan Creason. We lift up his family. We lift up Glenn High School and his teammates and classmates and the high school community as a whole. Lord, we are a close community and we feel the loss and sadness, and we pray that your spirit of comfort and peace would be with the family as they continue to walk through this tragedy. Lord, have mercy. Lastly, we want to pray for the men and women gathered here in their various roles. They are here to do a job, but they are away from families and are working when most of us have finished our workday. They come with their own burdens and troubles and desires and needs. We ask, Lord, that you would bless them and their families and their loved ones and give them your grace and mercy. Would you work in these servants tonight that they might trust you and do what they do for us by faith, knowing that this world is not all that there is, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, and trusting that there is a reward for those who earnestly seek you. Lord, please bless them and bless the deliberations of this meeting. May your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. So one of the great honors I have as mayor and this Board of Aldermen has is to recognize outstanding people, ideas, and achievements in the community. And so tonight we want to have a special recognition of East Forsyth High School Interact Club, the Glenn High School Interact Club, and the Rotary Club of Kernersville for their work with St. Paul's AME Cemetery. St. Paul's Cemetery is located at the gateway to our community and is a historical site and an important part of our town's collective history. It's important to cherish, maintain, and dignify this important place, this landmark. As you can see, the cemetery is in a wooded area, so a significant amount of leaves fall. Leaves, branches, and trash blown from the nearby shopping areas. The photos you see are a mix of photos from the event cleanup and some photos I went and took this week to show you the remarkable job the students did in uncovering the headstones, the tombstones, and really preserving and maintaining this wonderful historic cemetery. These students from Interact Club, the Rotary Club members, stepped up to help. Students from the North Carolina Leadership Academy and members of the Chamber of Commerce Leadership Kernersville class have also stepped up to help as well, and we will recognize them next week. And the Kernersville Historic Preservation Society has worked tirelessly to preserve and maintain this important landmark. Hopefully, the efforts of these students from East Forsyth High School Interact Club and Glenn High School Interact Club will help inspire future students to care for this important place. Our gateways are important places, and the efforts of citizens who take their time and step out and volunteer help make Kernersville a great place to live and a place we are proud to call home. At this time, I'd like to recognize Chris Gogler of the Kernersville Historic Preservation Society to briefly share with us some of the history and background of St. Paul's AME Cemetery.
We good? Yeah, we're all good. Right. Thank you. First of all, I would just like to say good evening to Mayor Morgan and the town aldermen, and thank you for the invitation to address you tonight about St. Paul's Cemetery. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. St. Paul's Cemetery is a pre-Civil War African-American cemetery. It's located next to the Stafford House at 711 South Main Street. And that's the yellow house as you're coming from South Main Street towards downtown. St. Paul's was the third established church in the town of Kernersville, and the cemetery is the burial ground for nearly the entire black population pre-Civil War. That's a long time ago. I always ask the students, do you remember when the Civil War was? There's always this hush amongst the crowd, and then I remind them. It went from 1861 to 1865. So that's a long time ago that we have graves that are there, and they actually have people buried there prior to that time. People often ask me why bother and why preserve cemeteries? Well, I share the following reasons. You can collect genealogical information listed on the gravestones. If you have a chance to walk through St. Paul's, you'll see a great deal of information on the gravestones. They sustain artistic and creative and technical values through the carvings on the tombstones. As tombstones progress through the centuries, you'll see they're made of different types of materials, and you can note that as you walk through St. Paul's Cemetery. You can acknowledge historical events through special monuments within the cemeteries. And you can also create a direct link to history, particularly in military and church cemeteries. And one of the things we're most proud of in our cemetery is the acknowledgement of veterans at St. Paul's. And in December, we do a laying of the wreaths that recognize the veterans that are buried at St. Paul's. People also ask me who's buried in St. Paul's. And I often say, well, every day people are buried in St. Paul, including veterans and educators and city helpers. Many citizens who made significant contributions to the town of Kernersville are buried in St. Paul's Cemetery. A census was conducted in the mid-1990s, and it was determined that close to 200 graves have been identified there. A memorial plaque near the entrance, if you have a chance to go there, lists both those graves that have been identified by the census and a brief history of the graveyard as well. Sarah Friend Hamlin, who has relatives buried in the cemetery, was responsible for the first cleanup back in the mid-1990s, and she coordinated the initial, not only the cleanup, but including the fencing, the pillars, and the driveway. Yeah, there is a driveway. When we get the leaves all cleaned up, you can see you can go all the way around the cemetery and be able to see all aspects of the cemetery. As you enter the cemetery, however, you'll see a number of stones. And one of the students asked me, are all these stones field stones? Are they all graves? And yes, they are. So if you're in there, don't decide to pick up a stone and take it home with you. Someone's buried underneath that field stone. In the olden days, when people did not have enough resources to do a gravestone, they put in what were called field stones. And these were different size stones, depending on the family, depending on the people, whatever individual was buried there, and they would put field stones there. Many marked gravestones, however, are also located in the cemetery and scattered throughout it. And as you walk through St. Paul's, you can read the stones and find out things about the people that are buried there. Back in the 1800s, the early 1900s, the United States lost a number of people to some very serious diseases, and that'll be often notated on the gravestone. And also, we lost many children at very young ages. So you'll find some of the children that are buried there are 2-3 years old, or maybe even a few months. So that's always fascinating to see what types of things happened along the way in terms of diseases and how people were buried there. A couple of years ago, a ground penetrating device was identified nearly 100 individuals, additional individuals, that were buried at St. Paul's that were not identified with a gravestone or with a field stone. The services were donated by Withers Ravenel. They're a company, engineering company out of Greensboro. And these graves are now marked with flat marble stones as you walk through there that were installed by volunteers. Stones were donated by the Marble Granite World here in Kernersville as well. Because the cemetery is located in nearly over an acre of fully treed land, as Mayor Morgan indicated, it's very difficult to keep it clean. If you go and look at many other cemeteries, they basically took all of the trees out and now you have grass where you can come through with grass cutters. Don't ever try to take a lawnmower through the cemetery. It's very, very difficult to do. You will see us with weed whackers once in a while up there. So what we do is we have to very carefully pick up all the leaves, as you've seen the students here were picking up, and you have to be very careful around all the gravestones, not to do any nicks to the gravestones and the tombstones. And we also bring a lot of storms through here, as you know, are very windy, and they bring down limbs. So we often are up there trying to bring down, carry the limbs away over to the side. Recently, we had a tree actually fall down. In fact, that was a good experience for me to teach leadership to the Leadership's Kernersville group. The tree was on the ground, and I said, now I'm a leader, and I have to figure out how to move this tree, and you can tell I can't do that. So I'm delegating it to my husband, Hanson, and I would never be able to keep this cemetery clean if he was not there helping with it. Many years ago, the Kernersville Historic Preservation Society, you'll see us as KHPS, took over responsibility for cleanup and maintenance of all of St. Paul's Cemetery. The membership of the KHPS is small and aging, I might point out, and as a result, more volunteers are needed to assist in preserving the cemetery and make sure that it can get cleaned up. In 2018, I convinced an out-of-town family group, some of the younger children, to come and assist in cleaning up the cemetery, and as I was watching them do that, I thought, well, this would really be easy if we could get someone to just adopt a month, a family, an organization, a volunteer group, students, and they could come in and every month they could just clean up. All I want them to do is 2 times a month, clean everything up, and then we would be able to keep it going regularly. Otherwise, as you can see, the leaves start to mount and mount and mount. So that's when it occurred to me that the Friends and Family Initiative, which would be adopting the 1th out of the year, would be a great, would ease a lot of the strain on the Kernersville Historic Preservation Society to do this. And that would be just 1 month. In other words, many hands make the work easier. The program was rolled out in early 2019, and we did really well. Since then, close to 20 organizations have helped us. Friend groups and families, over 100 individuals have helped clean up the cemetery. Most importantly, young people have come in to pitch in and to help us as well. At first, we had East Forsyth Interact Club, who reached out to me directly to set some time up. The Boy Scout troops came in, Junior Tar Heels, which is a member of the museum club here, and students from NCA&T also came to help. In fact, the newly built benches that you can see pictures of throughout as the PowerPoint demonstration is rotating through was built as part of an Eagle Scout project. And it's not uncommon for me to walk through there on the weekends and find people that are just walking over after they had to bite to eat at Cagney's, just sitting there and enjoying the peacefulness of the cemetery. But most importantly, recently, the Rotary Club of Kernersville and Leadership Kernersville engaged youth from the East Forsyth and Glen High School's Interact Clubs and the North Carolina Leadership Academy to participate in a massive cleanup effort. this spring, and it was under the guidance of Joshua Pratt. I didn't see him tonight. Eric Pittman, I saw him standing there in the back. Yep. And Tony Beddick, I met on the way in, and I'm not sure if he's still here or not, but I think there he is. I said, you look really different, not in your work clothes. I'd like to say that the KHPS is really grateful to all of the community that's offered to kick in and help us and assist in keeping St. Paul's clean and its efforts. I call it one of the few gems that we have that go back that far in history here in Kernersville. And I'd like to also thank the aldermen and the town of Kernersville and the mayor for the recent funding approval to repair a crumbling rock pillar, which you may have seen in one of those pictures, and adding stone to the circular driveway so people understand there is a driveway there and they can go all the way around. I would encourage all of you that are present today to not only take the time to visit the cemetery, I think you'd enjoy that visit, not after dark, do not go after dark, but organize a group to continue to preserve St. Paul's. Our next organized cleanup effort is actually going to focus on the tombstones. We're going to go in and actually have kits where we can actually start cleaning up the tombstones. Please do not try this on your own, even though you may have been there and seen many lichens on the tombstones and you can't read them. There's a very special kind of ingredient that you have to use to clean the tombstones, and we'll have kits regularly there to do that. We expect to do that in May, which is Historic Preservation Month, and we'll have an effort to clean the tombstones. Our website and Facebook page, which you can refer to, will provide further details on that. On a side note, I drove through today and the cemetery looks wonderful, as Mayor Morgan indicated, but there's plenty of trash that needs picking up. And if you need some fresh air and exercise right now, grab your gloves and a garbage bag and feel free to go up and spend some time at the cemetery and pick up some of the trash for us. I believe that Mayor Morgan is going to, where did she go? Oh, I believe Mayor Morgan, you're going to recognize. Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's please give Chris a warm round of applause. The information she talked about, a lot of it is available on the Kernersville Historic Preservation Society website, and her phone number and email. So if you have a group that is organized and would like to go out in the future, Chris has backpack blowers and that sort of thing to help with the cleanup. So we're just delighted to have the students here who were involved in this effort. We have the presidents of both Glen High School and East Forsyth High School Interact Club. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Sarah Morgan, who's president of the East Forsyth High School Interact Club.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. When we got to the cemetery, it was completely covered in leaves and trash, and a lot of the graves were completely covered. It was incredible to move away the leaves and to see the graves underneath. And it was incredible to help make this community a better place, because Kernersville is a great community. Thank you so much to the Rotary Club of Kernersville for helping us. We could not have done this without you. Rotary Club of Kernersville helped us so much, and we really appreciate y'all taking the time out of your day to come and help us. And I also want to thank the Glen Interact Club for helping us. We worked very well together, and it was a great opportunity to get to work with other students in the community. Thank you so much.
At this time, I'd like to recognize Malachi Corbett, president of the Glen Interact Club. So make sure your voice picks up. You might need to be a little closer than Sierra was.
Hey, my name's Malachi, and it was just a good opportunity to work with East and pick up most of the leaves. We got most of it done, but there was a smaller part that we weren't able to do, and like she was able to say, it's a hard job to do and it needs to be done on a monthly basis.
Thank you. So as Chris mentioned, Tony Beddick from the Kernersville Rotary Club is here. Tommy Hodgen, Dr. Mishy Jackson, Elizabeth Saunders, and Adam Moore are all Rotarians who have been involved with the Interact clubs at East Forsyth and Glen High School. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Tommy Hodgen and Adam Moore.
Good evening, folks. I'd like to first off thank the town of Kernersville, Board of Aldermen, Mayor Morgan, for supporting these youth within the Interact Club at East and Glen. Not many people know, but there was a lot of support from the town that they offered to us to help with this project because, to be quite honest, it was a daunting project for us to do. We in the Rotary Club support and sponsor the Interact clubs at East Forsyth High School and Glen High School. And I've been doing it at East and been the advisor for our Rotary Club at East Forsyth High School for going on in 5 years now. This is the first time that we had a joint project between East and Glen in the history of the Rotary Club and talking with the folks within Rotary. And that was really exciting. So I'm very proud that, as General Gorman said before, we planted a seed and we watched it grow. And watching these kids, these young men and young women lead a project and how much they got done in 2 hours was just simply amazing. I'll turn it over to Adam and have him talk more. Adam's a Rotarian that helps out with the East Forsyth Interact Club. Okay.
Good evening. So the Interact Club, a lot of people don't know what the Interact Club is, and this is a club that is sponsored by Rotary clubs in the high school level to have a situation where youth are able to participate in service, to learn about the value of service, and to learn about their community at large. And Interact has been a huge part of the history, both at East and at Glen. And we were thrilled that we were able to have this joint project between the two schools and have that collaboration. You would think that would have happened before, but it really hasn't. And we're grateful that it did. This project was important. The students wanted to find a way that they could recognize Black History Month, the month of February, and to get more involved in Kernersville's history, and more specifically Kernersville's Black history, and to see how rich that actually is here in town. And it's a story that many don't know. So if you've never gone to the cemetery, if you have never read about it online, it's a really great story about a part of our town's history that a lot of folks aren't familiar with. The town provided us with some great service. Curtis, you got a great public works department. You really do. Incredible. And then both the principals, Mr. Pratt at Glen and Mr. Hall at East Forsyth, were incredibly supportive of this. Our students came out, and we hope that this is a project that will continue for years to come, to have Rotary and the Interact clubs be able to support the cemetery. So thank you all for your help and support, and thank you to the board for allowing us to speak tonight. Thanks.
Also helping with this cleanup were some children of Rotary Club members who are not yet in high school, but they did a great job, and they're also here tonight to be recognized. At this point in time, could the members of Rotary who are here, who are involved in the event, who are involved in Rotary, or who are here for other reasons tonight, please stand, the Rotary Club members. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite our principals to speak. Principal Rusty Hall of East Forsyth High School and Principal LaDwan Pratt of Glen High School are here.
Thank you, Alderman and Mayor. We appreciate this opportunity to recognize our great students. We have a running joke at Rotary that when you give us the mic, we're going to see who can talk the longest. So I'm glad I got up here first. But it's great. You know, the East Glen rivalry on the athletic fields gets a lot of play. But really, all of us are about community. And the Kernersville community is such a great community, and it's awesome to give our students the opportunity to be part of that community, to get in there, do something good for everyone, and really teach them the spirit of giving, the spirit of coming together, and the spirit of working as a team, not only with our East students, but bringing in the Glen students and working together, because that's what this is about. That's what makes Kernersville such a great community. That's what makes Glen and East such great schools, is about that love for each other, that love for our community, and building that support that can continue generations to come. And so we're just honored to have the opportunity to help serve. And I can promise Adam that we'll continue to do this as part of the Interact Club for years and years to come, as we continue to support and give back to our community.
Yeah. And as Rusty said, again, we have such bitter rivalries on the field, but Rusty and I have a great relationship. And so it's great for this to happen. As they mentioned, as far as Interact Club is an opportunity for students to do student service and also build leadership skills, as you saw from our students here. So we look forward to there being more and more opportunities, because as you said, for this to be the first time for that to happen is something that should not have happened. So, but we look forward to working together moving forward, because I think that is something that the community needs. And I think that's a way for us to all bond together, because again, you work hard, you play hard. So as much as we show out and we have the games that are packed for football and those type things, we need to have the same type of energy when it comes to doing community service work to make this community better. So that's it. And I'm not sure if you're going to say other names, but I'll leave.
Thank you. I'd also like to give a shout out to Daniel Cottle Jones, who's here, who's a member of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board, longtime member of the Board of Aldermen in the past as well, and thank you for being here tonight. All right, let's recognize these students. Sarah Morgan, president of East Forsyth High School Interact Club. Isabel Gonzalez. Lily Hall, also from East Forsyth High School. Malachi Corbett, Glen High School Interact Club president. Alex Xavier Pender, Glen High School Interact Club. Kayla Scott, Glen High School Interact Club. Ainsley Herman. Grayson Wolf. And Emerson Wolf. And parents, you may stand, walk around, take pictures.
I would just like to say to the youth here tonight, thank you so very much for what you do. I always remind the youth, everything that you do today is preparing you for what you're going to do tomorrow. And this is a great step forward in your future. Continue to be community minded and continue to take every opportunity to give back to your community.
I'd like to thank each of you for doing exactly what General Gorham just said, and that is that every time you reach out and extend a hand to help folks in this community, you're helping to build the future here as well. I look forward to the day that you will be up here. And would you want to start next week by any chance? But thanks to each of you for all that you do. You're great folks, and we look forward to continuing to see you grow.
Yes, I would like to thank all of you. I think you're helping out our community, and the whole community loves you for it. I remember before Chris kind of took the cemetery under her wing, so I had it for a few years, and would go out there, and back then we used a lot of Boy Scout troops, and they were such good workers, and just like y'all are. And I guess they, in a way, passed the torch on to you, so you've got to keep this up and keep making it beautiful. And if you go out there just with one of your friends and spend an hour sitting on a bench, it's the most peaceful setting that you could find in any downtown. You get out there in those trees and you don't know you're in a town, just out in the middle of nowhere. And to go around and read the stones, you can learn a whole lot about Kernersville and your ancestors. So thank you so much for taking care of it.
Let's give these students another big round of applause. Thank you. Y'all may sit down. Jenna Jackson from East and Kaylee Nappy from East. I'll repeat their names in case. Jenna Jackson from East and Kaylee Matha from East were also involved, but were not able to come tonight because they had work obligations. All right, at this time, as Mayor of Kernersville and on behalf of the Board of Aldermen, it's my honor to officially celebrate National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week. Our police communications is so important in our community. Kernersville has its own police dispatch, our own police 911 center, with men and women on the front line of handling crisis, advising patrol officers. It's a stressful but important position in our town. They are trained to handle a variety of circumstances and skilled in de-escalating situations. And this week, we join in the national observance recognizing the importance of these unseen first responders. So the week will be April 10th to 16th, but we're recognizing it and celebrating it, starting at this meeting tonight. So at this time, I'd like to invite forward Amy Cluis, our communications manager, Captain Eric Pittman, Investigative and Technical Services, and the dispatchers who are here this evening. Emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. Public safety dispatchers are our first contact our citizens have with emergency services and a vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. Whereas public safety dispatchers are more than a calm and reassuring voice at the other end of the phone. They are unseen first responders, knowledgeable and highly trained individuals who work closely with other police, fire, and medical personnel. Whereas the public safety dispatchers of the KPD have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. Whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. And whereas public safety dispatchers daily serve the public in countless ways without recognition by the beneficiaries of their services. Therefore, I, Dawn Morgan, as mayor of the town of Kernersville and on behalf of the Board of Aldermen, do hereby proclaim April 10th to 16th, 2022 as National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week in the town of Kernersville in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our town and its citizens safe. And personally, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all that you do for our community and the citizens. Your work is very much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone. I brought some of our crew with us tonight. We have Savannah Henshaw, Sarah Hill, Bob Dalton, and Thomas Harris. We really appreciate this recognition. They do a very, very good job. It's a very stressful job, but they are able to stay calm in all kinds of situations, and we just really appreciate it. Thank you.
Captain Pittman?
Yes, my name is Eric Pittman. I'm a captain with the police department here. I know some of you. Hey, Chris, how you doing? I want to let you know, a lot of people think that police officers and firefighters and EMS workers are on the front line, but these men and women here are the first people that are contacted. I think that gets lost in translation, and I'm glad that this week is here to acknowledge them on the outstanding work that they do. And as administrative staff with Chief Summers and Captain Tilley, we couldn't be more proud of the team that we have here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do, man. I appreciate it.
We have reached the end of our ceremonial agenda. If you are here for the ceremonial items, We appreciate you having been here, but unless you're really, really interested in something else that's on the agenda, this is an excellent time to leave, and no one will take any offense. I know students have a lot of work to do, and Chris has been very busy, so she probably needs to take a break too. We appreciate you coming, Chris, and sharing that history with us. All right, as we begin our public session, the first item is speakers from the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board on an item not otherwise included on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the 2021 annual reports and 2022 budget request. We have tonight the Chamber of Commerce, Senior Services, Senior Center, and Kerner's Folly. We'll begin with the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate your help. Hello, everyone. Chris Comer, Kernersville Chamber of Commerce President, 136 East Mountain Street, right here in Kernersville, North Carolina. Mayor, Alderman, thank you again for continuing to allow us to come and share the honor that we have in serving our community. At this time, I'd like to thank our board members that are here. We've got Joe Ornstein, our chairman, Cindy Stewart, she is our treasurer, Dana Cottle-Jones, a director, and Crystal Tanner is our VC of Human Resources. I don't think I've missed anyone else. And we have the rest of our board is online. So we appreciate them joining us. I'd like to share with you that we've got a whole new team. So I wanted you all to be able to see our picture. Ashley's here with me tonight. This is Ashley Sinclair. She is the marketing director for programs in downtown. And then you've got me. This is Tacey Burdett, and Tacey is the associate director for membership and business development. Then there's Lisa Hedgecock, and she's our executive assistant. She runs the joint. And then Amanda Ruark, and she is our finance director as well as tourism and economic progress. Thanks, Cameron. I wanted to just take a quick opportunity to share that the Kernersville Chamber of Commerce is an organization of businesses and professionals working together to promote the economic progress in the community. This is one of our recent groundbreakings. So not only are we doing ribbon cuttings at this point, we're doing groundbreakings, lots of building going on in Kernersville. And we, of course, still do our ribbon cuttings, but we do our business of the month as well. This was our December business of the month. I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that we could not do what we do without you all. The support that you continue to give us, the town of Kernersville. We'll talk a little bit about Spring Folly, but we couldn't do any of those things without all of our community in assistance with the town of Kernersville. At this time, Ashley's going to share with you a lot of things about downtown and marketing.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first Alderman meeting, so I'm a bit nervous. I got some butterflies going on. But again, thank y'all for having me here. Yes, so downtown Kernersville, I'm honored to take on that role as part of being with the chamber. I have met, I would say, 80 to 90% of the business owners. They are amazing. We have several, is that me? We have several collaborations that we do with several of the business owners and as well as a lot of organizations here in Kernersville. You know, we've got the trick or treat that we do with the parks, the downtown Christmas that we do with the museum. We've got Spring Folly, there are numerous amount of heads with Spring Folly, and I will not list all of them, but we are grateful for all of that, and that's coming up in a few weeks. We continue to see a lot of foot traffic. I'm really thankful that we are right in downtown. We see daily foot traffic, either Cake and All Things or Deli on Main, Fiat's, the boutiques, those bags. I mean, we see them everywhere. It's like they glisten in the sun, and we love it. We love seeing it, and we love to see people come in and say, "You got a guide? Can we see it? What's going on in downtown?" And we're like, "Yeah, here you go." We'll hand them like 5 things, come in for one. So it's really nice, and I really enjoy that part of my job and everything. Next, I'll talk to you a little bit about marketing. So this has been fun to take on marketing. This is a huge platform with an insane following that I have somewhat added to since I have been here since October. The downtown Kernersville now has a following of about 6,200 people. When we post, we reach upwards of 8 or 9, depending on the content. Same with the Kernersville Chamber, about 5,000. And we will sometimes reach up to 10,000, 12,000 people when we post, depending on, again, the content and what it involves. With our newsletters, we did a little bit of rebranding this year for 2022. I was noticing that the open rate was about a 37-ish%. We are now at a whopping 56. So we are working our way up. We have several people who will comment on it. They love that we include a lot of things in there first, versus, going to Facebook to introduce things. That makes our members feel that, we are connecting with them and whatnot. So it's really great. I've loved to rebrand that, actually. So social media will continue to change. I'm trying my very best to stay current with all things that are moving, because it changes every single day. But I've got Chris to thank to kind of just say, yeah, actually, sure, go for it. So I really enjoy that. Yeah, thank you. And Chris will take it away.
Ashley's doing some amazing things with encouraging collaborations downtown and also business to business. So we're ecstatic about that. Our economic impact, I do want you to note, because we're super transparent, that 2017 membership was in a great place. We had a slow growth in 18 and 19, and then 2020 hit. So we had a little bit of a drop in that, and then you can see in 2021, more of a drop. I'm glad to report that we continue to increase each day. Our membership is growing, and we're very thankful to our businesses and our community for continuing to support the Kernersville Chamber of Commerce. Not only did we do virtual types of things the beginning of 2021, we said in August we were going to just go for it. So we did Healthy Living Expo, we got in the golf tournament, we got in the annual meeting, and we had record numbers in all of those. And our parade, as you all know, was just huge this year. We're really thankful to get feet on the streets and to work with all our collaborators. Of course, the Kernersville Museum, Paul J. Cena Botanical Garden, Kerner's Folly, the Kernersville Family YMCA, the Shepherd Center of Kernersville, the Salvation Army, Crisis Control, and the newly built Kernersville Classic Car Museum for all that they do for us, for our community, and with us. We're a strong chamber because of our businesses and our collaborators. So just to summarize, we appreciate all that you all do. We're very thankful to be able to share with you all that we are honored to do in the town of Kernersville and the community. If you have any questions for us, we're here to answer those. And please call us at any time. We're open book. Any questions? All right. How'd I do on time?
Thank you, Chris and Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next is Senior Services. Lee?
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to be before you this evening. I am Lee Covington. I have the pleasure of serving as the President and CEO for Senior Services. In addition to our senior lunch site here in Kernersville, our main office is located at 2895 Shore Fair Drive in Winston-Salem. and we're pleased and proud to serve all of Forsyth County. So a couple of quick slides just to remind everyone, if you are familiar, if you're not, to give you some idea of who Senior Services is and why we exist. And it's really about that one big blue word up there, dignity. Dignity for the older adults of Forsyth County. And we are there to assist them to remain in their homes for as long as possible, living with dignity and aging with purpose. And we do that through a variety of programs and services. We are a private nonprofit. Without the dedicated service of more than 1,700 volunteers, we simply could not do what we do. The majority of those volunteers are out delivering Meals on Wheels every single day, Monday through Friday. About 1,500 folks assist us with that. 9 of those routes are right here in Kernersville. We have 110 dedicated staff, some incredible board members, and a large group of faithful donors who help make our mission come to life every single day. We have 8 programs. You see those on the screen there. Probably the best known is Meals on Wheels. It's our largest program. But there are other programs that, again, are designed to help support older adults remaining in their homes for as long as possible. And we do have an annual budget of around $7.2 million. So last year across Forsyth County, we served more than 2,100 older adults with direct services. And you see the numbers, over 393,000 hours of in-home nursing and certified nursing assistant care. Almost 250,000 meals provided across 3 programs, the majority of those through our Meals on Wheels program. In addition to those meals, about 24,000 pounds of groceries were delivered to folks' homes. Over 3,600 days of respite care at our Williams Adult Day Center. Our Aging Resources team responded to more than 12,000 requests for information, emails, phone calls, folks walking in who needed assistance. And again, I mentioned that army of volunteers who last year provided nearly 13,000 hours of volunteer assistance. Here in Kernersville, we are currently serving 221 people. Typically, that runs somewhere between 10 and 12% of the total group that we serve across Forsyth County. And we're thrilled to be able to provide services for those 221 people. The next slide will break those out by program. And you'll see again, the largest group is Meals on Wheels with 123 folks being served. Our senior lunch site serves 46 folks. We're thrilled to have those sites back open. As you might imagine, during the height of COVID, we had to close those all down. And so we're thrilled to be bringing those folks back 3 days a week for a nutritious lunch and meaningful activities. Our home care program serves 21 folks here in Kernersville. Our Living at Home Medicaid waiver program serving 29. And then we have 2 Kernersville residents who currently come over to our Williams Adult Day Center. Your support this past year has made that possible. And we are so thankful for the $15,000 allocation that we received this year. Again, that helped us to continue those 9 Meals on Wheels routes here in the Kernersville area, as well as to reopen our senior lunch site here. And for the coming fiscal year, we respectfully ask that you continue that same allocation of $15,000. That will allow us to continue the great work here in Kernersville that we've been doing for so many years. Before I close and open it for any questions, I do want to invite all of you and everyone in the room to a special event coming up in about 4 weeks. The photo there you see is an artist rendering of a new facility that we'll be breaking ground on April 27th at 10:30. This will be a 61,000 square foot facility that we're calling our Intergenerational Center for Arts and Wellness. It will be the new home for our Williams Adult Day Center, as well as 8 other organizations from healthcare to arts and creativity to child development, bringing all of these partners into one space. It will serve the entirety of Forsyth County. And so we're looking forward to engaging with the residents of Kernersville and finding creative ways to get folks over there so that they can experience this. So please join us on April 27th at 10:30 for that groundbreaking.
And this is next month.
This is, yes.
All right.
At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Covington?
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
You obviously have done a good job during the peak of COVID with continuing your Meals on Wheels program. What type of challenges did you have and how did you overcome those during COVID?
Great question. So the first and biggest challenge we had was volunteers who said, I can't do it right now. And so that meant a pretty instantaneous shift in how we delivered those meals. So we moved from daily delivery of hot meals to weekly delivery of 5 frozen meals that could be reheated in the microwave. We had some volunteers who were able to stick with us, but basically staff had to take over those responsibilities. And for about 6 months, I even delivered 2 routes myself every Monday and every Friday. So all of our staff were in there continuing to deliver those meals. Once we were able to shift back to daily hot meals, which happened a few months back, we had volunteers who were at the ready, and we've recruited probably 300 or 400 brand new volunteers that have helped us kind of reopen and restart that program.
You did a great job, and thank you for you and your volunteers.
Without those volunteers, it wouldn't have happened.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Senior Center. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello. I am Lisa Miller. I'm the Senior Center Director for the Shepherd Center of Kernersville, and we are now located in a new facility at 636 Grayland Street. I do want to thank you.
Let me stop you there and maybe move the microphone. I'm not sure everyone will be able to hear you.
Okay, I'll step closer.
Okay.
Take a step back. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our annual report this evening. And what an amazing year we did have. In the midst of a pandemic, we got a new building. I know some of you were at our ribbon cutting this past weekend, this past Sunday, and thank you for coming to that. But the opportunity to move to this new facility finally united 2 locations under one roof. Senior Center was located across the courtyard in the basement of the former Pattison Library, and our administrative offices were on Bodenhammer Street, and we are finally together as one cohesive unit. Hopefully there'll be less confusion about who each one of us are, and the community will see us as a much stronger entity. We closed on the building in July, and by October we had shut down operations in both locations for about 3 weeks while we packed up, moved, and then we reopened on November 1st in the new location. I do want to again, I know I came last fall, but I want to express our deep, deep appreciation for allowing us the use of the space for over 20 years across the courtyard, a place where aging adults and disabled adults in our community could come and be able to gather, to learn, to grow, and to socialize. I would like to take a moment before I get into the details of our report and to thank Debbie Grant here with the town of Kernersville. She got us our new location back on the senior transit shuttle service that goes around town on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And she worked with us to get the new location as a stop on that, so that as it goes around town, it's able to bring people to the senior center for activities on those days. We believe that is a very beneficial and valuable service to the older adults in our community. We've spent the last year very slowly, very carefully re-implementing, rebuilding, and creating new programs for the folks that we serve. For 2 years, COVID has impacted everything greatly, but we are serving probably the most vulnerable population for that virus. And although we were able to begin re-implementing on-site programming in late 2020, we had to halt that in January, February, and March of last year due to the numbers that were increasing in our county. During that time, we also cut our staff salaries, and we cut the days of operation from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to economize, because during the pandemic, we couldn't hold fundraisers. So we had to cut things back just a little bit. But in April of last year, we once again began the process of restarting our on-site and in-person programming, returned to a 5-day operating week. And I'm glad to report as of this month, we have fully re-implemented our regular weekly and monthly on-site in-person programs for seniors in our community, with the exception of 2 programs that wish to remain virtual at this time. But everything that we offer day in, day out, week in, week out is back on site. With our regular programs back on track, we're excited to begin rebuilding our special one-time events that we have. And those are things, one-time lectures and one-time programs, and creating even more of those as we proceed forward. We recently surveyed our regular participants and even non-participants in our community to see what kinds of programs they would like, and we'll begin to re-implement many of those ideas and suggestions. And we're also going to explore some intergenerational programs with our senior adults and children in our area schools here in Kernersville. Although we were still not able to operate as we normally would have liked to in 2021, we were able to increase the number of programs over what we were able to do in 2020. We're still not back up to pre-COVID attendance numbers yet, but we are certainly getting there and well on our way. We're beginning to see our numbers increase in a lot of areas. Our line dancing, our square dancing, chair exercise, yoga, and our acoustic music sessions are seeing numbers that are greater than what we saw pre-COVID. Those activities have grown tremendously. Our recent open house and ribbon cutting have generated a lot of interest, and we feel that those two events will greatly motivate even more of our past participants and new participants to return and come to the center for the first time. We've seen an influx of new participants to our program since our move. Since November of last year, we've seen over 270 new individuals become service recipients, new volunteers, or new participants. We were one of the few organizations to be able to continue to offer our community free income tax returns for low to moderate income individuals and families last year. When many other sites across the state could not open, we worked diligently with the AARP Tax Aid Foundation program, and we were able to offer this service in a curbside manner. This year, once again, we're one of the free tax sites in our area and have been fortunate to not only retain, but to add some new volunteers to that program. In 2021, we were able, like I said, to offer curbside preparation for 350 tax returns for 451 individuals. And this year, we'll be able to complete over 600 free tax returns through a more modified in-person or drop-off service. We estimate with an average simple tax return being about $220, at those 600 tax returns are saving our community $132,000 this year at a minimum. Our durable medical equipment loan program grew by over 50%, with a 50% increase in the individuals we served and over 70% increase in the number of pieces of equipment that we loaned out. And we loan out walkers, rollators, canes, crutches, chair lifts, seat assists, all kinds of durable medical equipment. And 100% of that equipment is donated to us from members of the community. We also do wheelchairs, standard and transport. I don't want to forget that. We have a computer learning center where we offer computer instruction, consultation, tech support for desktops, laptops, notebooks, tablets, e-readers, smartphones. And it grew exponentially, as you can guess, over the past 2 years. We had 435 interactions with individuals needing assistance this last year, which was 255 more than we did in 2020. It's been a difficult 2 years, but COVID has provided us with new opportunities regarding the way that we are able to present programs. In the past, we did programs in-house or off-site. They were all in person. Now we have the ability and the capacity to do virtual programming. Also, what we're calling a hybrid program, where someone is in person, much like what you're doing tonight with this meeting being broadcast on YouTube Live. People can be here in person or they can watch it virtually. We're doing the same thing with a lot of our programs. Our yoga classes, our cooking demonstrations, our caregiver support program, and several of our lectures over the past several months have been offered as a hybrid program. If someone doesn't have the technology and they don't know how to look at something that's a 100% virtual program, they're welcome to come to the center now, and we broadcast all of our virtual programs for them. They can go to the computer lab, or we set up a meeting space and broadcast it for them. Our fundraising efforts, I will admit, last year were very challenging for the organization as a whole and for the Senior Center. The Senior Center was able to host one fundraising activity last year, which were chili sales in cooperation or with partnership with Prissy Pauley's. And as a whole, the Shepherd Center was able to host its golf tournament in the fall, our 2 annual fundraising campaigns, and a unity campaign for our new facility. This year, we again held the chili sales, and we're looking forward to selling chicken pies in partnership with Mama's Chicken Pies here in Kernersville, right next door to our new location. And we will hope to be hosting a creative and a quilters retreat this fall that will be a fundraiser. And we're also exploring other opportunities as well as we move through the year. I want to thank you for your financial support of our organization's Senior Enrichment Program, especially in the past. The funding you provide, we don't designate it for any specific use. We use it for our general operating purposes to cover program expenses, salary, office, and other general expenses. We work diligently to develop new ways to raise funds for the center and to make budget adjustments and monitor our expenses to keep them at or below budget. Your strong investment in our aging population will enable us to maintain as well as continue to increase the vital free or low-cost educational, social, health and wellness, and enrichment activities in this community. And for the first time in over 20 years, I'm not asking you to renew our lease or to cover the expense for our utilities for the senior center. We truly do appreciate all that the town is doing for us, what you've done for us in the past. Together with your support and the support of this community, we are enriching the lives of adults in Kernersville who are aging or who are disabled. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those at this time.
Are there any questions for Lisa Miller? Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, our next report is Kerner's Folly. Welcome, Dale.
Can you hear me?
Maybe a little closer to the microphone.
How about now? No? I'm a little bit tall. Better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Dale Pennington, Executive Director of Kerner's Folly. And on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Kerner's Folly Foundation, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for town support. Your support has been essential in preserving this treasured piece of Kernersville history. Tonight, I am joined by members of our Board of Directors, past and present. If you'll please stand. Thank you. Together, these folks provide unending support and commitment to Kerner's Folly and to our community. Kerner's Folly is the most recognizable structure in Kernersville. Its value to our town is immeasurable, and its historical significance is priceless. We are dedicated to the restoration and preservation of this great landmark for the education and enjoyment of the public. Slide. Thank you. This evening, I'd like to touch on some highlights from our annual report. As you know, this funding goes towards the marketing and promotion of Kerner's Folly. Our tourism marketing efforts directly benefit the town of Kernersville because our patrons visit Kernersville businesses. They shop downtown, they fill up at gas stations, they visit parks, they stay at hotels, and they dine at local restaurants. Kerner's Folly actively cooperates with a variety of local nonprofits, attractions, and merchants to make sure our visitors are making the most of their trip to Kernersville. And in return, we know these organizations do the same. We work together to market Kernersville as a destination. Next slide. As you can see from our annual report, we're still very much recovering from the pandemic, although we are optimistic. This graph is in attendance from the last 15 years of attendance at Kerner's Folly. In 2021, we welcomed over 10,300 visitors compared to 3,778 in 2020 during our mandatory 6-month closure. So we're still not back to our 14,000 visitors from 2019, but we've worked really hard to reopen and are really happy with our progress. Thank you. In 2021, we continued to build on community collaborations to aid in our recovery. This growth demonstrates the importance of our partnerships with the Kernersville Little Theater, the Chamber of Commerce, the Botanical Garden, and the Kernersville Museum. We also partner with other attractions across the county, such as Old Salem, Ranolda House, Tanglewood Park, and Visit Winston-Salem. And we have long-standing hotelier relationships for evergreen and seasonal packages with the Gibson House Inn, the Brookstown Inn, and the Schaffner Inn. We are optimistic for 2022 and continuing to plan for more events and programs that highlight collaboration. We just partnered with Preservation Forsyth for a lecture about historic wallpaper. In April, we'll once again be partnering with the Girl Scout Council and local homeschool families for our spring programs. In May, we're teaming up with the museum for a photo contest for Historic Preservation Month. And our biannual Vintage Market, which is held in April and August, regularly welcomes over 1,000 visitors and supports local businesses. We also continue to work with local schools and are just now welcoming back our very first field trips from the pandemic. Last week, we had the entire kindergarten of Kernersville Elementary come to the Folly for the first time since February 2020. To date, we have 20 groups and field trips already booked for this spring compared to 8 total for all of last year. So it's really exciting to see renewed community interest and people back out doing their part to come visit our community. Slide, thank you. In addition to community collaborations, the growth we saw in 2021 is also a direct result of our marketing and public relations efforts. Some of our most successful efforts last year include collaborative ads with the Steiner Botanical Garden, a 5-page spread in Our State magazine for December, PBS's North Carolina Weekend, our Kerner Quarterly magazine, and a feature in the NC Tripping travel blog with over 80,000 views. We also have a targeted social media presence across major platforms. We've increased our social media marketing, search engine marketing, and search engine optimization. We are also mindful of how our restoration has been an impetus for tourism. In 2021, we restored 3 rooms, the foyer. Here's a before and an after for you. The children's playrooms and the library. To date, 14 of the Folly's 22 rooms are restored. And as a preview for success to come in 2022, we are restoring the summer kitchen with the help of local donors and the State Historic Preservation Office. The restoration projects continue to stimulate repeat visitation and increased awareness for the well-being of the house. Kerner's Folly is the icon of Kernersville, and we are proud to finally be able to showcase it in a safe and historically appropriate way with enriching programs to complement the restored house. For our capital campaign for the Visitor Center, despite the pandemic, we were able to successfully raise the $750,000 to match the town's funds in 2021. We matched these funds with donations from individuals, small businesses, grants, and corporations, showing widespread support for this project. Kerner's Folly is growing exponentially and seeking to create a new space for programs, events, and field trips for the Kernersville community and beyond. To conclude, more than just a beautiful place to visit, Kerner's Folly helps citizens connect with history and with each other through educational programs and community events. Kerner's Folly would not be in the shape that we're in today without the town's support. And for that, we are especially grateful. Thank you.
Dale, could you tell us a little more about the 20 field trips that have been reserved for this spring?
Yeah, so we've been getting a lot of inquiries from all grade levels, from the kindergarten who just came through. We have middle school curriculum as well. And then we have 5 of those groups are field trips for local interior design classes. So like West Forsyth is coming next month to come take an interior design tour. And then there's also colleges and universities locally. UNCG has a historic preservation field school, which will be coming through in May as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we've got consideration of an agreement with Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department.
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in your packet the agreement. This has been in the works for a little over a year. In fact, the building and everything was approved last year. It's in the budget for fiscal year 21-22 that we're currently in. but we started out down one path for an agreement, and that didn't work. So we had to go back and change the way we were doing the agreement. Just to summarize the current agreement as it is in your packet, the town will actually be the one now that does the contract on the building. We will be the one to put the building out to bid. We will select the contractor. We will be responsible for building the building. A little different than that initially started out. When it initially started, Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department would do that. Now we will be responsible for that. We will also, they will deed over 1/2 interest in the building to the town upon the signing of this agreement. The other 1/2 will be deeded over either when we pay off the loan or when they cease to provide services. We will jointly share the space. Beeson's will remain in the facility. We will relocate Station 44 to the facility as well. That's outlined in the agreement as to how that will work. We already have a mutual response with them, so that really won't change. But that's outlined in the agreement as well. The agreement has been approved by Forsyth County. As I may have mentioned, Forsyth County has to approve the agreement because we put a clause in the agreement that, shall Beeson's go out, technically all volunteer fire departments, when they cease operations, their equipment, buildings, and so forth, go back to the county. We did not want that to happen, especially since we will have a significant investment in the building. We have a clause in the contract that will not happen. So the county has approved it. It's been signed by the county. Beeson's has also approved it. They're waiting this. We have not sent it to them yet, pending this board's approval for their signature, but it has been approved by both parties. So we feel good about this agreement. Again, as I told the board early on, this was not initially, the board initially purchased land. The town did further down Tig Lane, a little further south, to relocate Station 44. We purchased that land some years ago. This allows us, what this does is this will allow us to relocate Station 44. From this location, we can service the previous area as well as the South Main Street area. Without this location, at some point in time, we would most likely have to have another station somewhere in the South Main Street area. Building the building is expensive, obviously. If we had to build a new one on South Main Street in addition to the one on Tig Lane, you've got 2 buildings. This way you have 1 building. And you also, the good thing about this agreement is we are able to relocate the personnel from 44 to Beeson's. If we had to build a new 44 and a new station on South Main Street, that would mean that we have to hire 12 new personnel. So the ongoing cost of a second station would far outpace the cost of the building at some point in time. So, I'd like to thank Chief Alderman. He's the one that really, he got behind this and drove it, got Beeson's on board. They were very reluctant at first to sign over half the building to us initially. Chief Alderman worked with their chief and their board to get that done. And, I'd like to thank him for all of his hard work. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Mr. Powell can answer any of the legal issues. Chief Alderman can answer any of the issues regarding any of it, operational or likewise. So be glad to answer anything that you may have.
I'd just like to thank you, Curtis, for your work on this, Mr. Powell for your work on this, and Chief Alderman for your efforts on this. It took a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions. And Kernersville and Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department have a rich history of working together. I think when I first campaigned for alderman and I was first getting really, really involved in the town, there was a fire safety month program for the community at Beeson's fire station in this location. And just seeing the retirees from there and the people involved and the people from Kernersville there just made me appreciate how much firefighters work together, and just that family traditions of firefighters being in different departments, being a volunteer in one department and a fire professional in another department, and the service among different generations and different brothers being in fire service. So just a lot of close ties, and you know, the really important thing is to work together to serve the citizens. And I'm just very excited that all the discussions were had and that we've come to this point where the board has an opportunity to take a step to preserving this and enhancing the service for all the citizens. So I just want to thank you for the efforts to go above and beyond, and appreciation for all the service of Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department personnel, and look forward to a long working relationship in a new and improved building. Okay, are there any questions?
Curtis, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Bill.
Curtis, are there any, the Board of Beesons will continue to function, I gather, after this happens?
Correct. And it's what it is Beesons will be in the station and they will operate as Beesons. We'll be in the station and we'll operate as Kernersville. So they'll have their board of directors that they currently have in place that will oversee their operations. And then we, of course, the town will oversee the town operations.
What will be the relationship of their board to the town, though? In other words, do you envision any type of issues as far as their board not agreeing with what this board does? And how will they be resolved?
It's in there it's in the contract about operational, about how that operates. Basically, the way it is, we answer our calls. We assist Beeson on their calls. We're responsible for the maintenance and so forth of the building. And any issues they have in their department among their individuals, they handle. Issues we have in our department with our individuals, we handle.
Okay. And I want to echo what the mayor said. This has not been an event. It's been a process, and I want to congratulate you and Ed and Chief Alderman as well for the hard work. You've had a lot of other things to do that you could have spent that time on, I'm sure, but thank you.
I just got a couple of questions. Looking forward, how long do you anticipate the volunteer fire department being there? Because reading the contract, it kind of looked like, you know, they'd phase out at some point.
You know, that's hard to say. Chief Alderman and I were at a meeting in Guilford County with the volunteer fire department, and I think the gentleman said there were 1,400 volunteers about 15 years ago on the rolls of volunteer departments, and that's now declined to maybe 200. So Beeson's has an active, they have an active board and an active volunteer group there. So, it's just hard to tell really. But they do a good job with what they have. So, it could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's just hard to tell. They, at one time, is what was really hurting the volunteer departments was they were losing service area through annexations. When municipalities went out and annexed, that came off their books and then became part of the municipality. Involuntary annexations have stopped. I think if that starts back up to where you can do involuntary annexations, then you may see some, not just for Beeson's, but some other volunteer service area decline, which would at that point probably diminish some of their role as well. So it's hard to say. It really just kind of depends on the makeup of the department. I know Beeson's, again, is more active than some of them. But I will tell you that all of them, not just in Forsyth County, but Guilford County, across the country, Ed said nationwide, across the country, volunteer departments are struggling. So it's just hard to tell, really.
Now, if they go out, are we going to cover the area they cover?
Yes, sir.
That's part of the agreement.
And that's part of the agreement that we would cover that.
Is there any way they could kick us out of the building after we build the building?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
And currently we are in mutual aid agreements, so that there's a lot of times if it's a fire in their district, they take the command and control, but we go assist. And if the fire's in our district, we have the command and control, but they come assist. So the firefighters from Kernersville and Beeson's work together on mutual aid as it is. Any more questions? Because this is the time to ask them.
I have no questions. I'll motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Thompson. I have a second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, we will move on then to item D, consideration of a contract for the Old Salem Road and Teague Lane intersection study. Are you taking that, Mr. Swisher?
Yes, ma'am. This item was approved. The funding for the study, $58,000, was approved at November 9th, 2021 board meeting. It's part of budget amendment number 3. We have let the contract. Came back with Morton Thomas and Associates to do that study. It's $53,250.17. The town's portion of that is 20%. So we will match it up to $11,600. And that funding, we already have that funding available. It's in our Caleb's Creek Capital Reserve account. And this study was one of the studies that was placed on the original conditions of the project back years ago. So this will be an intersection study there at Old Salem Road and Teague Lane. We're recommending approval of the contract, and we will sign that if the board approves it and get the study underway.
Can you speak a little bit more to the issues with that intersection and the process of an intersection study?
Yeah, the intersection, as most of you are familiar with, it's got some challenges. If you're going, I guess, west on Old Salem Road, you come over the hill there, it makes it very difficult for individuals coming off of Teague Lane, turning left on Old Salem Road to go west. It makes it very difficult to make that left-hand turn. As cars come over the hill, it's a very short sight distance. So it's not real difficult to pull out in front of someone. And they're usually carrying more speed than you are when you turn out. Also, at 2 times during the day, in the morning and in the afternoon, Southeast Middle School is right there. Caleb's Creek Elementary School is right around the corner. That presents some challenges as well on the intersection. So it's what they will do is they'll go in with a study. They'll do a traffic count. They'll take into consideration the intersections, the turning movements, from Old Salem Road on the Teague Lane, whether you go straight at Old Salem and Teague Lane, and also the turning movements there from Teague Lane on to Old Salem. And they'll make recommendations on what needs to be done at that intersection to make it more efficient and more safe for the folks traveling in that area.
Okay, are there any questions?
I got one. Every time people complain about a road, the answer is always, well, that belongs to the DOT. Whose road is this?
DOT.
Well, why are we spending $20,000 having this done?
It's part of when the development occurred out through there, that was part of the agreement. We would do the traffic study, and as you can see, DOT is paying 80% of it. So it is part of that development is inside the town limits, but the road is DOT.
Good deal. Thank you.
We don't have any problems on our roads, just DOT roads.
Are there further questions? Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, and on the unusual circumstance of our needing to solve a problem on one of these roads, I'd make a motion we approve the contract.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Apple and a second from Alderman Gorham. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous.
Just don't hold us to that solving part.
The first step in solving it. All right. The next item is consideration of acceptance of a grant for the purchase of property for Parks and Recreation.
Madam Mayor, I'll cover E and F at the same time. They're both basically the same thing. The board approved last month, I believe, for the scope of work. We were awarded a $1 million grant for the purchase of property. We submitted that grant for the $1 million to go toward the purchase price of the land on Shields Road and Union Cross Road. The other one is the purchase of fire equipment. We submitted the scope of work with the equipment that we intended to purchase. Both of those were approved by the state, and you now have that contract in your packet for approval. Once approved, we'll send it back to the state and start executing the contract. you'll have to approve them individually, but I can cover them both at the same time.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 2E, the land grant contract?
So moved.
I have a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, next is the fire equipment grant contract, and that is item 2F on the agenda. Do I have a motion to accept it?
So moved.
All right, I've got a motion by J.R. Gorham and a second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Hooker, did you get that motion by Mr. Gorham?
Yes, thank you.
All right, the next item is consideration of application for an ICAC, Interstate Crimes Against Children grant.
Madam Mayor, you have a memo in your packet from Chief Summers regarding the grant. It will not exceed $35,000, and it will be used to purchase equipment, computer equipment, and train officers specifically for the investigation of internet crimes against children. We're asking the board to give us permission to apply for this grant. There's no match on the town's part, so whatever money we are awarded in the form of a grant, we will be able to use without any matching funds required.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion by Alderman Gorham, second.
Second.
Second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, we've got next item H and item I, which are resolutions for notice of intent to reimburse for purchase of real property located at in 2H, it's at 1223 Union Cross Road, and in 2I, it's at 0 Shields Road. Mr. Swisher?
Both of these are for the property the board approved to purchase last month for a total of $6 million. This is a formality. Is what this does is it allows the board, if we put up the entire $6 million up front, and then we decide to go back through and borrow any money on any of it, as you know, I think we have most of that money. We have about 4.8 million, so we're about 1.2 short. So we have an option of either taking the 1.2 out of our general fund balance, or we can finance the rest of it. So what we'll do, and probably initially, is we'll have to pay for it all up front at closing, and then we will go back most likely and finance a portion of that. To do that, we have to have this notice of intent to reimburse. It's just a step in the process of going through the local government commission and going through the banks. So both of them are the same. It's just two different parcels. 1223 Union Cross Road is a larger tract of the two, and 0 Shields Road is the parcel right beside Tredegar.
Okay, we'll vote on them separately. Do I have a motion as to 2H?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Apple. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Penix. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, we're to 2I, which is the property located at 0 Shields Road. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson, second. Second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, moving on to item J is consideration of a temporary street closure for the Cache Elementary School Carnival.
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in your packet the memo regarding this. Came up pretty quickly, about missed getting it to you, but we would have probably closed it anyway. This Bagley Drive is the little short road there beside of Cache. They're asking to close it from Highway 66 down to the stop sign there on April 1st, which I think is Friday night, for their little spring carnival from 5:30 to 8. We've closed it in the past before. It's never an issue. We usually take the barricades out. They pull them out, close it, they pull it back open and open it. Never been a problem. There's not a whole lot of folks that use that cut through. And if it's closed, they just go up to the light there at Tally's Crossing and make it right. So we're asking the board to approve the street closure, and I've checked with Pat Ivy. He's fine with it. No problem on DOT's end.
Okay, and I was planning to take a break in about 20 minutes if y'all are okay, or we can take one now. If everyone's good, we'll go for a few more minutes. All right, the next item would be the briefing on the April 5th.
Might need to vote on that last one if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do I have a motion?
I'd make a motion.
Motion by Alderman Barrow. Do I have a second?
Second.
second by Alderman Penix. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All righty. Thank you for that. Slowing down the meeting there a minute,
Hey,
Mr. Swisher.
I'm all for rolling on.
All right. So the next item would be a briefing on the April 5th regular meeting agenda. We'll have recognitions again of some students for their efforts in the St. Paul's AME Cemetery. The next will be a public hearing. We've got a public hearing and a preliminary subdivision review. And Cameron Colvin is here if we have any questions. If you can just briefly tell us about item 1A, which is the single phase conditional use rezoning, zoning docket case 719A5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the only rezoning on the agenda this month is a conditional use rezoning for track 3 of the Smith Crossing development off of Union Cross Road. This particular track was previously approved for detached single family back in 2018, some of you may recall. And so there's been some changes in the housing market since then. The developer is now proposing to develop townhomes on this track. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I got a question. I went down there and looked at that particular piece of property you're going to do. Is there anything that y'all consider about putting that many homes backing up against a subdivision where you got single family homes sitting on 3/4 of an acre? I mean, is there not a rule that says you can't put them right beside each other?
Yeah, so as part of the original conditions for the Smith Crossing development, there were conditions put in place to require a 50-foot buffer yard as well as a 6-foot berm between the adjacent single-family residential and the new proposed townhomes. So that'll help provide additional screening from existing single-family and the new proposed development on that track.
Screening.
Yeah, so it'll be a full buffer yard with a berm, and the required plantings will be planted on top of the berm so that the new proposed townhomes will not be visible from the adjacent neighborhoods.
What's the traffic flow going to look like down there?
Yeah, so as part of this request, the developer did do a traffic impact analysis. I believe that the trips generated were just over 1,000 per day, and that's over the course of the entire day, with varying peak hour trips as part of that. There's 3 proposed connections to the new development, 1 from Solomon Drive, as well as 2 to the adjacent residential streets that stub into this tract. As part of that study, they did also find that 98% of users would utilize that primary entrance to the development off of Solomon Drive, and minimal traffic would go through the adjacent residential neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Mr. Apple?
Is it my understanding that that particular tract on which the townhomes are proposed to be built, at one time that there was a plan for single family homes as well? Is that the approval or the approved zoning that is in effect right now?
Yes, that's correct. So a little bit of history on this tract. It was rezoned as part of the initial rezoning for the entire Smith Crossing development back in 2013. And then, as I mentioned, in 2018, a single phase rezoning was requested to rezone the property for a single family detached development. And so that's why it's coming back before the board, because they're requesting a change in uses to allow townhomes instead of single family.
Will that traffic study that was done by the developer be a part of the package, the study itself, the results?
We can make sure that that's included. I'm not sure if that was included as part of y'all's initial packet.
I'd really like to see that
Yes.
before we act on it next week.
Okay. We'll make sure that gets sent out to you all.
Okay, thank you.
I got another question. Do y'all ever consider the impact on the old neighborhood in terms of property values? Is that something that the planning board looks at?
So it is a consideration, but it's hard to justify with metrics without having assessments done and things of that nature. But it is something the board considers.
Right. Do y'all anticipate people from the neighborhood showing up the next meeting?
We have gotten a couple of concerns from neighbors. I know at the previous rezoning back in 2018, there were concerns regarding some of the proposed connections. Similarly, some of those residents have expressed similar concerns that the proposed development would increase traffic along those neighborhood roads. So that is something the developer did hold a neighborhood meeting and has been in contact with some of those adjacent neighbors. And they have agreed to traffic calming measures along both of those roads to help address some of those concerns that they can touch on in more detail next week.
I'm not smart about these things. What's traffic calming?
Things such as speed bumps or stop signs, other types of measures to slow down traffic, make sure that it's a safe environment for anyone walking along those roads.
Who's the developer?
The developer is Leoterra Development. They're a development corporation, I believe, based here in Kernersville.
Have they developed anything else around here that we could go look at?
Not off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
If you could find something for me.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them and see if they have some similar developments that they could share with the board.
Good deal. Thank you.
I just want to add traffic. Alderman Barrow and I went together to look at the site, and the traffic coming out through those main thoroughfares by the larger homes, the larger tracts. I will just express to you, it's a little consolation to me that there may be speed bumps and stop signs. I think we've really got to project ourselves living in one of those homes with this type of intensity of development or density of development. So I really am interested in seeing those traffic studies. I just think we've got to see those in time to look over those before we'll be able to formulate a position as to a vote. In my respect, anyway, with my respect.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll make sure that is shared ahead of time with the board. So that case was heard at the planning board meeting on March 14th. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning and site plan with the conditions that's included in y'all's packet. The planning board also did vote to recommend approval with a vote of 5-1.
Do you have any questions? Are there any more questions? Is that the case you got called about, Keith, about a petition?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We've had one citizen, actually two citizens who've commented. One who said that they would be present at the meeting and wanted to know how to be a speaker, and one who said that wanted to know if they needed to submit a petition ahead of time or if they could bring it with them to the meeting. And in both cases, I advised the citizens that they could come to the meeting because we are meeting in person.
I think if there's anything, Mr. Powell, I think that if there's something they would like us to consider in advance, they could go ahead and submit it to Mr. Hooker, and then he could share it with the mayor and the aldermen in advance of the meeting rather than waiting to bring it to the meeting.
That's correct. They can send it ahead of time.
Is
We'll
this
send it.
is this a legal petition or is it a expression of concern by the neighbors type of petition?
I don't think it's a legal petition. This one's like you usually get. It's just the neighbors have went out and gotten folks to sign it expressing their concern with the subdivision. As far as I know, is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding as well, because the state no longer does the petitions that they used to allow for rezonings by neighbors. So at this point, any petition is an informal one rather than a legal one.
Well, I think the board welcomes, it's a legislative process, and the board welcomes emails and letters and correspondence about a zoning case in advance of the meeting.
Yeah, we'll
we have
send
limited
it to
time frames the night of the meeting, so it's good to get the information earlier if possible.
Yeah, we can send that.
All right.
Yes, Madam Mayor, if it is sent to me, I will forward it onto the board.
Okay, super.
They may still be gathering some petitions.
Okay, super. All right, anything else on this particular zoning case? All right, we'll move on then to item 2B is going to be a preliminary subdivision review for the area around Witt Station Lane.
Yeah, so this is a preliminary subdivision for the Piedmont Commerce Center. As you may recall, these set of properties came through a rezoning sometime last year, and so now they're submitting the preliminary subdivision for those lots. They do have construction plans in that staff is currently reviewing for the proposed development. And so this preliminary subdivision was heard back at the February 14th Planning Board meeting. The applicant requested to postpone the Board of Aldermen hearing until this month so that they could be present for that. Staff is recommending approval of the preliminary subdivision with the conditions in your packet. And the Planning Board also voted to recommend approval as well unanimously.
Are there any questions? All right, the next is a resolution that would rename Witt Station Lane to Piedmont Commerce Drive. Mr. Swisher or Mr. Colvin?
Sure. So as part of that request, the developer is petitioning to rename that road from Witt Station Lane to Piedmont Commerce Drive.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, then we'll have the annual reports and then 2 resolutions relating setting the public hearing for a voluntary annexation petition. Mr. Colvin?
Sure. So the first annexation request is for the new food line that's to go in at the corner of North Main Street and County Line Road. So that'll be coming through. They also have construction documents in that staff have reviewed and approved, and they're looking to break ground fairly soon. So that's something to look forward to.
All right, and then the second one, properties off Watkins Ford Road.
This is a newer request that has not been before the board yet. They are requesting both an annexation as well as a rezoning and proposed subdivision off of Watkins Ford Road for single-family homes. This is on the agenda for the planning board meeting on the 11th for consideration. And so this will be the requested annexation for those properties as well to be considered at the same time.
Okay, any questions? All right, the next is the next that we will consider at the April meeting is a consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 10, Article 3 of the Code of Ordinances to update the noise ordinance for the town of Kernersville.
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in your packet a copy of the noise study that was performed There's also, and I sent it to you all, and we've not uploaded it, so we'll upload it tomorrow. I thought it was in here, but it's not. But a memo from me to you all with some recommended changes based on what the noise study has shown. We've got changes to 4 of the sections, section 1083, 1084, 1085, and 1086. And each of those changes that we're recommending are outlined in that memo. 3 of them are pretty minor. One of them that we're recommending is that we change up some, dealt with item O under section 1085, which that item basically said that if you have a outdoor entertainment venue within 300 feet of a residential area, then you had to stop at 8 p.m. So based on the noise study, the decibel levels that were taken, decibel readings that were taken at those venues and so forth, we've recommended some changes to item O. And the other 3 changes, one of them deals with landscaping and yard maintenance equipment, exempting those at certain times of the day, and so forth. So we have those in there. I will cover those in more detail on Tuesday. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have regarding those now.
I think it might be easier and less confusing if you took this ordinance off of the website and put the one you would propose with the changes on, because what's you currently have on there is not something that is the current law. It's not been adopted. It basically looks like the proposal that was presented a few months ago. And I think that the reason we did the sound study was to get some new information.
Okay. We will.
Is everyone okay with that? So that we would have the ordinance we would actually be considering in front of us and not.
Okay.
But so to see this one, we can go back a couple months and look on the agenda for that meeting and pull this again.
Okay.
But I think it'll look like we're considering the same exact thing that we considered before. And there'd be a risk that we've got 2 different versions of it pulled up.
Okay. That's fine. I'll update that tomorrow. And then we'll also add the memo to that kind of explains those recommendations and the changes.
I think it may be a formatting typo, but I've been wondering why in section 1082, 11, 12, 13, and 14, part of the language is italicized. And not in the 1 through 10.
Yeah, and 11, 12, 13, because it's just describing like horn signaling devices. That is the type of I guess, what causes the action or so forth. We can take the italics out. Put the vehicles out of repair, it's under that or exhaust or any of those. The information following that is basically telling that if you have one of those, then that's what's the violation would be.
Right, but we didn't italicize number 9, explosives.
No. So we can change that. That's not a big deal.
Okay. Or number 3, loading operations, just to.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns at the moment?
I've got a couple for you. Under section 1085, you talk about the standards, and it talks about, things to consider. It talks about any sound that annoys or disturbs somebody, along with other things. I tell you, I'm not good with annoying and disturbing. That's a subjective matter, and anybody could be annoyed or disturbed. And I don't think that's a standard that needs to be in the law, even though we may have got it from another jurisdiction or saw it somewhere else. It's subjective. Anybody can be annoyed or disturbed. And I mean, I think that needs to delete that. And again, the section O there where it says you got to stop at 8 o'clock, I don't agree with that at all.
And that one is one that we recommended to change.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll
change
update
it to 8 o'clock.
No, this is the old one.
Yeah.
So in the memo that I sent with the noise study to the board,
Okay.
I recommended changing that, and I can tell you what it is.
Okay, that's good. I was looking at the old one.
Yeah, for the months of March through September, basically,
right,
kind of the summer months, Sunday through Thursday. So basically your weekdays. We recommend stopping at 9:30. On Friday and Saturday during those months, we recommend stopping at 11. In the winter months, basically October through February, Sunday through Thursday, we recommend stopping at 9. And October through February, on Friday and Saturday, we recommend stopping at 10. And that's pretty close to about the time that it stops now, especially in like December and January when it's cold, they stop well before 10.
That sounds good.
And so that change will be made, as the mayor was talking, those changes will be made and reflected in the new one. I think probably, I don't have a problem with the part you mentioned earlier, that either noise disturbs and injures and endangers. I can take it out now. I think probably the time to do that would maybe be recommend that change on Tuesday and have the board vote on that. We do have a clarification of that though, so that it's not as, just discretionary. So it's got to be the complaint of 2 or more persons, at least one of whom resides in a different home from the other complaining person, and when combined with the complainant of a duly authorized investigating in person. So basically you got to have 2 people and an officer to go out and hear that and determine that it's annoying or disturbing or something like that. So we tried to do that so that it wouldn't be just a random, hey, I'm calling up and reporting Alderman Barrow for making a disturbing noise. Basically, you got to have 2 people say, yes, I'm willing to go to court and testify, and we have to have an investigating officer say the same. So, we thought that, because I did have the same concern, I think Mr. Powell did, that you expressed.
Right.
I mean, that leaves it wide open. Anybody can call and turn anybody in. And honestly, we didn't want to be out chasing our tail with this thing either. So
Right.
I think by saying we got to have 2 people and an officer here, or it's not a legit complaint, I think that takes some of that out. But I would recommend leaving that in, and if you want to take it out Tuesday night, then we can certainly do that.
Okay.
But I'll make the other changes as outlined in my memo that I recommended. And then, of course, if you want to change those on Tuesday night, that won't be a problem either.
Cool. Thank you.
I'd like a little more study to the particular. I think Mr. Barrows brought up a good point. Could we focus in a little bit on that wording and maybe some of the case law cases or cases we've had around here to define what words we need to have in there exactly, of like what the legal standard would be as a good standard for the town? And maybe Mr. Barrow, you could work on it a little bit with Mr. Powell, talk about it before Tuesday.
Thank you.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, I can tell you from.
I want to measure twice and cut once on this.
I can tell you though that honestly is if you've got that you have to have 2 people in different houses and an investigating officer say that, if they all 3 say that and it goes to court, it's probably going to hold up. If you don't, if we go out there and it's just one person that's complaining, if we don't hear it, we're not going to do anything anyway, because if we can't hear it, we can't go to court and testify. So we have to hear it. We have to be able to say that, yes, we heard it. You got 2 witnesses, that heard it. If everybody shows up in court, that's a pretty good case in court. Otherwise, it's not. So we did do what you suggested when we drafted this language to begin with, and we feel as though that's probably the best way to make sure it's not just random application of the ordinance. We've in the past had folks that would video incidents, go to court, and that seems to hold up. We don't have time as an officer to go out and video the incident. So it's what we have to have, and that's why we said two people, is because, again, one person just gets mad at their neighbor. At least now you got to have two people mad at their neighbor, which, increases your chances a little bit. Like my neighbor, yeah. So I think we've done what you're suggesting. We'll look at it a little bit more to see if there's a better way to tighten it up, but I think that's about the best way to do it. And in the past, it's what's happened is if we went out and somebody's complaining, if our officers do not hear it when they get there, say, someone calls the law and says, hey, my neighbor's playing loud music. If we go out and our officers don't hear it, and the other person really has no evidence that it occurred, and they're not willing to come to court and testify, we don't cite the person. I mean, we can't, because we're going to go to court. They're going to have an attorney, and they're going to beat us to death in court, and it's going to get thrown out, and we wasted everybody's time. So we'll look at it again to see if there's a little bit better way to tighten it up. But of all the ones that we looked at, that was about the most solid way to make sure that it was pretty tight.
Well, pinpointing the concern, I think the concern is the word noise and annoying noises. So disturb might be okay, depending on what the case law is what I'm suggesting, that maybe it's a multi-page change to our noise ordinance, and just that small wording is what I thought might bear a little bit more
We'll look at it. Yeah,
focused
we'll look at
review.
It. Yeah. And
Given the concern.
We'll give it another read over between now and Tuesday and may change that wording up and recommend some more.
Mr. Apple?
Mayor, I have 2 points. One just in terms of a suggestion maybe for Ed and you to consider, Curtis, might be language instead of whether it annoys them, it's language that they have reasonable or good faith belief that the decibel level set in the ordinance may be being exceeded. In other words, they'd have to have some sort of good faith belief that that's the case. And my concern is this: I have a question that expresses a concern I have. I'm not sure that it's a good thing for law enforcement to be involved every Friday night. And I guess what I would like to know from Ed, from you, please, Tuesday's fine, but what remedies are available if we have someone of peculiar sensibilities or of extreme sensibilities, and just because they don't like what's going on, they call the police every week? What are the remedies available to the town if that, or to law enforcement, if that abuse of the process occurs? And I'm thinking out loud now, and I don't need to be thinking like a lawyer, but I'm thinking about filing a false police report or something of that nature. What can we do if that occurs?
We can add a provision to that effect, and I'll work on that.
And none of the other aldermen may have that concern, but I kind of do.
Well, and that I can tell you that's a concern of these guys behind me here. We've had a lot of, not just one area, but we've had several areas in town with continuing complaints about the noise ordinance and, violation of the noise ordinance. We'll go out, we don't hear anything. If you're a smart individual and your neighbor says, hey, I'm going to call the police on you, well, you turn your noise down. Now, some of them aren't smart enough to do that before the police get there, but most of them are. So we get there and it's quiet. Now, and we get called sometimes and they'll respond and they've not turned the noise down, but it's not a violation. And they continue to call. We've had that in several areas through town. They've responded. We've talked to the folks. We've talked to the offender and said, hey, can you just help us out here? So there does need to be some remedy in there if that continues to happen. And as I stated earlier, it's what we've done in these situations where the police call or where the police get called, they go out and nothing's happening because, again, the folks were smart enough to turn the noise down or to stop whatever it was that was causing the noise. We've told the individuals, take your phone out, video it, and then we'll assist you in the process of going downtown, taking out a summons against a person and appearing in court. That has been fairly successful. We've had some barking dogs through the years that the complainant has videoed. They've taken their neighbor to court, and they've won the case. So in those instances, when we repeatedly go out, we've just asked the person, hey, it's on you. We can't get here in time to do anything. In the situations where we go out and the noise is there, but it's not a violation, honestly, we're wasting taxpayers' time and money going out. And there needs to be some remedy in there, and short of filing a false police report, I don't know what we can do, but Ed and I'll get with the chief and see if we can come up with something, because that does happen.
That last circumstance is exactly what concerns me.
Yeah.
And I'm really, as we balance the interest involved here, I clearly am interested in protecting those people who need legitimate good faith protection.
I agree.
I'm not interested in our law enforcement folks when they should be monitoring potential drug activity standing over there with a decibel meter in their hand because somebody wants to make a telephone call. I'm sorry for being that blunt, but that's the way I am.
I 100% agree with you, and I think these folks behind me probably do as well.
Okay, any more questions as to the noise ordinance?
There's always the option for the police to tell them, if you're not happy with this, go to Winston, talk to the magistrate and swear a warrant, see how that works. That's something that we hadn't talked about, but that's always available.
Yeah, you're right. And as I said, we've done that before.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you tell them that, it somehow becomes no problem. There's no noise at all being made. So, sometimes that cures itself.
Mr. Gora?
I still think, and I always have thought in regards to this noise ordinance, that making time criteria is only going to take care of the immediate problem. It's not going to address things that might occur 10, 15 years down the road as demographics change, work schedule change, more industry come into the neighborhood. What seemed to be the time where everybody seemed to agree this is the time that we need to cut the noise off now might not be that way 5 or 10 years down the road. If we continue to try to address the immediate problem, we're not forward thinking about how things are changing in Kernersville and what Kernersville is going to be looking like 5, 10 years, cutting something off at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock might solve some people's problem, but it's going to create problems for other people who have different work schedule, because of how we're growing and developing in this community. So that's my only major concern about this, is putting a timeline on it. It should be across the board, in my opinion.
Well, and let me explain that it is across the board. The noise ordinance is in effect 24 hours a day. There's a decibel level, and it's 5 decibels different usually at night than it is during the day. Now the hard cutoff time, and I wasn't real clear about that, so I'll be clear on. I'll tell y'all tonight, and I'll be clear on Tuesday. The only hard cutoff time that we're recommending is for outdoor entertainment venues that are close to residential. Now the catch there is they've got a hard cutoff time of whatever the board chooses, but the recommendation's at 9:30 during the week, 10 or 11 on the weekends, depending the month. So they've got that hard cutoff time, whereas after that time, they can't have any outdoor music. So from the latest they would be able to play is 11 p.m. So from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., they can't have any outdoor music. Now, the decibel levels are still in effect. So, say for instance, at 7 o'clock, if one of these places has got a band playing and they're at 80 decibels, they're going to have to turn that down to 65. So we try to do that to take into consideration what you're saying. It's 24 hours that's in effect. Now we have different decibel levels for different zoning areas. We've got residential, commercial, industrial, and then like retail. So we did do that to take into account the very things you're saying. If you've got an individual that works third shift and they're at home asleep and you got a neighbor that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they're blaring music, we're going to go out, and if it's above the decibel level, they have to turn it down. Same thing with outdoor venues. They can't exceed the decibel level. They just have a hard cutoff at 11 o'clock. And the thinking there was, we don't want to let them play all night long and say, okay, as long as you can stay under the decibel level, you can play, because what that leads to is inevitably they're going to go above the decibel level. So at 3 a.m., if they're out there playing music and it spikes at 70, they're going to wake the neighborhood up. So we wanted to set the hard cutoff time for those outdoor entertainment venues, but everybody else you still got to adhere to the decibel level all 24 hours a day. And so we did that, to try to take into consideration those folks that are at home during the day, or they're at night and it's 7 o'clock and they're trying to go to sleep. So it's in effect at, all times. Now, will that at some point change? I agree with what you said. As Kernersville develops, it may be that we need to change the decibel levels and either lower them or raise them. And I think at that point in time, the board would need to say, if we see that coming, just like we do our land use plan, we would need to say, hey, okay, we need to go back in. This area has changed. They've got better sound equipment or whatever it might be, and we can either raise or lower this decibel level. And I think it's where you'll see that change come is as you see some more residential developing against like more mixed use. I think then you may have to adjust your decibel level some. So I don't think these are set in stone forever. I think it will need to go back in at some point and change it, because you make a very good point. As we grow, the mix of uses is going to change. And I think then we have to go back in, just like we do with our land use plan and everything else, and kind of make those adjustments.
Do you have any follow-up questions? Are there any more questions on the noise ordinance? All right, well, in honor of opening day of Kernersville Little League being this Saturday, I think it is time for us to have a seventh inning stretch. So we'll have a brief recess. Welcome back to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. We are on the briefing agenda for our upcoming meeting. So we are right now on item 2 of the March 30th agenda, which is briefing on the April 5th regular meeting agenda. All right, so we just finished item G. So we'll be going on to H, and I, which materials have not yet been posted. Mr. Swisher, do you have a time frame for when that will be available?
We plan on having those posted by Friday. I'll go ahead and cover both of those. Item H, the American Rescue Plan Act. As you all know, we will be receiving about $7.9 million. You have to have certain policies in place, and those policies have to be basically the way they tell you they have to be. We have most of those policies already as it relates to town in our finance policies and conflict policies and so forth, but there's particular wording and so forth like they want it. So there will be 6 resolutions on Tuesday night that relate to federal uniform guidance standards. You can adopt all 6 of those at once because they will only be applicable as it relates to federal grant money and a federal uniform guidance of that.
So with one vote?
Yes, you can adopt them all with one vote. If you choose not to adopt those, then I need to know, because we'll have to send back the $7.9 million because they won't let us have it otherwise. Pretty easy option. And item I is a grant project ordinance. As part of it, we have set up a grant project ordinance for the monies from the American Rescue Plan to go in that project ordinance, and it will come back out of that ordinance and be dispersed the way that the board appropriates it.
Okay, item J.
Item J is budget amendment number 6. We will have that up, we hope, by Friday. It's a lot of amendments, some of it with American Rescue Plan and so forth, but we think we can have that up by Friday as well. Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, item K.
Item K, the first round of ARPA money came in, and as we've said, that has been allocated into salaries and wages, and that reflected a savings in our general fund. Part of that has been allocated by the board. Part of that savings allocated to the Parks and Rec Center. Some of it went to pay for incentives for vaccinations and then 2 new salary positions. There's still a savings of approximately about $442,000. The previous board and even this board has indicated that they would like to see some of that, the rest of that savings be allocated as supplemental funding to the nonprofits that experienced losses during COVID. I followed the kind of in calculating how much each was due. What followed about the same guidelines that they gave with the ARPA money in determining how much they could be reimbursed or how much they could receive in as far as COVID losses go. So it was over a period of 2020. I think it was from March of 2020 until December. And then I think it was like January through June of 2021. You could reimburse for revenue losses and also for operating expenses as well as salaries and wages. So what I did was I requested information from the nonprofit groups that are routinely funded by the Board of Aldermen in a year. And I took the information they sent me. I calculated what that amount would be. The total amount came to, it was well over $1 million. What I did was I kind of said, okay, the board, I would recommend giving them supplemental funding up to the amount that they lost, or half of the amount they lost, or $100,000. So there's a cap on it so that one organization did not get all of the funding, because I can tell you there's several organizations in here that if there was no cap on it, one organization would have received the entire allocation. So you have in there the supplemental funding that's being recommended. We have the Botanical Garden, the Chamber of Commerce, Kerner's Folly, Kernersville Museum, Crisis Control, Senior Center, and Next Step Ministries, $433,800. The one that that is not recommended, we can put it in there. Don't have a problem with that, is the Salvation Army. If you do that, I would recommend funding equal to the Next Step Ministries. So we're glad to answer any questions you might have on that tonight, Tuesday. If you want to give me an email or call, I can also go over and kind of tell you how we came up with the numbers. Yes, sir.
What was the Salvation Army initially included in that?
They were only funded basically last year as one-time funding. We also give them a rate reduction on the building, so we did not include them. I would honestly probably recommend going ahead and allocating the $16,000 to them so that they're funded in that way. Basically, everybody that we fund that either help the folks that were impacted by COVID or that are tourism related are funded. But that was the reason with the Salvation Army last year, was the one-time funding with them. The Crisis Control was also last year one-time funding. They got in. I think they've been funded in the past. They have not been until last year recently. So I would recommend that we go ahead and do Salvation Army. And it's justified any way it goes, because this is savings and not ARPA money. So we can certainly do that. Again, I would say probably the same amount Next Step, because I think that's what we funded them equivalent. I would have to look, but about what they were funded last year, or in this year's budget, actually.
Any further questions? Okay. Item L.
Item L is the last grant that we still have outstanding from the state that we need to submit a scope of work for. It is the $400,000 infrastructure improvement grant. They've now widened that out a little bit to include equipment and so forth. But it has to be, if it's infrastructure improvement, it has to be on infrastructure that the town owns. It's $400,000. Senator Crowley asked that we allocate $100,000 of that to the police department, which we will do. So the other $300,000 can be allocated any way that is acceptable to the state. I will have recommendations for you in Tuesday's packet. We're still working through those. Still have Rebecca over in finance. She's contacting the state with different projects that come up to see whether or not it's eligible, because I don't want to recommend one, you adopt it and we submit it and it's not eligible, because then we're right back where we're at. So we're still checking on eligible projects, and I will know that. Should know it by Friday, and then I can have the recommendation to you by Tuesday.
Any questions? All right, at the meeting in April, we'll have a consent agenda, items removed, a town manager's report. What do you anticipate bringing up?
I need to ask the board to add for Tuesday night 2 items. One of them is consideration of an agreement with NCDOT for a locally administered project. It's a state economic development agreement. DOT has authorized or will approve authorization of a grant for the North Point development for a 2-party agreement to help in construction of the road there. So that's the first one. And the second one is along the same thing. It's consideration of an agreement with North Point Development for an NCDOT locally administered project. So one of them will be between the town and DOT, and the second one will be between the town and North Point, to make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain, and then DOT's will be between us and DOT. So if the board can add those for Tuesday night, just approve it, and I'll get with Keith on the wording. We can add those as item M and N.
Would it be more appropriate to add it between C and D?
I would just do it at the end. I mean, it's not going to matter. There's not going to.
The developers wouldn't still be here.
You can do that. I mean, they might be here, but I mean, it's pretty much, I don't even know if they would speak to it, but we can certainly add it there so that if they want to speak to it, they'll be here. That's not a problem. I would just make it item D and E and then move everything down. We can do that.
Okay. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? I've got 4 in favor, 5 in favor. Okay, it's unanimous. All right. Anything else for the Tuesday?
Not for the Tuesday. I have a couple for tonight, but not for Tuesday.
All right. Items for Mr. Powell to bring up on Tuesday?
Don't have any items for public session, but do need to have a motion for closed session.
Okay. All right. That concludes the agenda item that is the briefing on the April 5th regular session. All right. So we are to the consent agenda for tonight. These matters are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the following item. A, approval of minutes for January 26th closed session. B, approval of minutes for February 8th closed session. C, approval of minutes for February 23rd regular meeting. D, approval of minutes for March 1 regular meeting. E, consideration of a request by the Kiwanis Club of Kernersville for the Town Hall Courtyard for Miss Mary's Children's Parade, and F, for Forsyth County tax refunds. Is there anyone who'd like to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none in the audience, seeing none on the board, do I have a motion for approval?
Items 3A through 3F on the consent.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Thompson, second Alderman Barrow. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Okay, so tonight, the town manager's report.
Madam Mayor, I have two items. The first of those, I want to bring you up to date on the Parks and Recreation, the new building for Parks and Rec. We've been meeting with the contractor on that, Summit, out of Greensboro. We met with him the other day. The board authorized several months ago, the cost of the building went up. Board approved 16.7. We met with them. The cost of the building right now is at 17.7. That includes about $1 million in contingencies, meaning that, if we don't spend them, that money comes back. So we don't know. We've not put it out to bid yet. I just want to let you know that's where we're at before we put it out to bid. Once we get bids in, we'll know for sure then. Still won't take into account the contingencies, because right now I can tell you they're loading everything up with contingencies. We've got a design contingency, a construction contingency, then we've got an escalation clause. I mean, it's loaded up because they just can't pinpoint the price of materials. Some of them, some materials they don't even price until the day that it is shipped. So there's no real way to tell. But right now, when you take the contingencies out, we're tracking on budget for what the board approved at 16.7. We will, if it stays, if the bid comes back in and it's around 17.5, that amount will have to be what's approved and what we borrow, so that we don't borrow too little and go over. But just want to let you know they'll be putting it out to bid, and we'll have a more firm number on that. We do have some estimates on the cost of relocating the building. As you all know, it was initially proposed to go at the corner of Beeson Road and Shields Road. When the board voted to purchase the land there, you gave us permission to seek quotes, or an idea, not a quote, but basically some cost on what it would cost to relocate it. We've gotten those back, and it involves right much. It's not just taking a building, flipping it, and putting it on there. It came in about what we were anticipating. That quote is about $140,000 to redesign and relocate that building. That does not include any road design for DOT, because we do not know yet what DOT is going to require. We think that they'll probably require some type of turn lane as you're going west on Shields Road toward Union Cross Road. We think they'll probably require a left turn lane into the parking lot, but depending on what they require is, what it costs. So we're about $145,000 to relocate the building. If y'all are okay with that, you figure that'll go in the cost of the project. It'll be spread out over 20 or 25 years. So if you're okay with moving the building, my recommendation would still be, we knew it'd be some cost involved. My recommendation would still be to move forward with relocating that building to the corner of Union Cross and Shields Road, because over the long haul, that's the best place for the building. Some of these costs that we've got in here, we still have to do with the building where it's currently at. We've got to do a new geotechnical study, new structural study. But the big cost is basically in, kind of just flipping the building, the site development there. So about, it's 145 roughly. And again, we'd put that in the cost of the building or in the overall cost when it comes back. So if you're okay with that, you can just say, yes, I'm fine with it. You can vote on it. I'll let them know tomorrow morning. Yes, continue on that path. We will realize some savings by moving the building. I think we anticipated it being about $50,000 to $60,000 cheaper for the sewer cost, because we think we can tie in. We're not 100% sure, and we won't know until we do the exact layout, but we think we can tie into the sewer along in the Field Crest area. Initially, where it was located, we were going to have to run it all the way down to the existing portion of Ivy Redmond Park and tie in there. So we'll have a shorter sewer run. We might change that anyway so that we can open up some more area for potential development in the future that's not currently sewered. So, but if we didn't, the sewer cost would be less. Now, if we run it to open up some future area, It may be a little more, but we were probably going to run it anyway to open up some future areas. So it'll be a little bit cheaper with the sewer. So in the end, you won't see much of an increase. I mean, it's still right much. It's probably $120,000, but I think in the long run, I think it'll be a better location there on the corner. So if the board is okay with that, I can have somebody make a motion to continue forward with moving it to the corner. We'll let the folks know tomorrow morning.
I would so move. I'm sorry.
I have a motion from Alderman Penix and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Apple. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
And the other item I have, the board approved last month, I believe, an event application for Kernersville Brewing Company. They wanted to close the road from whatever the road is there beside of the insurance company up to the railroad tracks. And last year they did that, and they did the event. They served alcohol. They served it on the sidewalk in the town right of ways. We've got an emergency provision. We got a provision in effect that as long as the state of North Carolina is under a governor's state of emergency, folks can have dining and alcohol. It's allowed on town right of ways and so forth. So they had it last year on the sidewalk and in the back in the right of way the town owns. I thought that was the same type of event they were planning on having this year. I've since talked to the lady. She is wanting to have an event under the new ordinance that allows alcohol to be served in the road in designated areas. It's a different process. They have to pay a permit fee. Then we have a committee here at the town that meets and either says yes or no. We had no problems last year from that event that they had. My recommendation, and the reason I'm just bringing it up tonight, is because their event's May the 5th, so we kind of have to make recommendations. They have to get permits and all of that from the ALE and ABC board. My recommendation is to still move forward with the event as they are wanting to have it. They'll just have alcohol out there in that portion of road that's closed. We had no problems with it last year. The board adopted the new ordinance to allow that to take effect. This would be the first event that we've had there. In my opinion, you couldn't ask for a better group to do the first event because they were responsible last year with how they did it. So if the board's fine with that, I just wanted to make you aware of that change, that it's not going to be just on the sidewalk and out back. It will be out in the road. If y'all are fine with that, I'll proceed forward with getting her the information that she needs to fill out so that she can get it done in time to have the event. I think the event's May the 5th, if I remember correctly. I think it's a Sunday afternoon, maybe a couple, 3 hours there in that time frame. And again, they have to have, I think the standard is like one officer per, is it one per 1,000? Yeah. For every 1,000 people they expect to attend the event, they have to have one officer at a max of 5. So, she might have from 1 to 5. So if y'all are okay with that, I'll move forward with getting her that application. And if somebody make the motion, either yay or nay, if you're not okay with it, I'll tell her we're going to have to start back over and go back through it. But we don't have a problem with it from staff standpoint. I talked to the chief. We're fine with it. We'll be sure and get with them and kind of give them the parameters. She's aware of the new ordinance and what's involved in it. Emailed her and she said, yes, I'm aware of that. It's a $250 application fee. Then they have to come back with proof that they've got the permit, special event permit from ABC folks and all of that. So she's aware of that and good with that. And I told her if the board, I'd bring it up tonight, and if the board approved it, then we can get started on it.
So the board is not normally approving this type of event. It would be the committee.
The committee recommends it for approval.
And then we vote for it.
And then y'all vote for it.
Got it.
And like I say, it was just a misunderstanding. And the other one, I thought she was wanting to do the same type of event that she did last time. And she said, no, I'd like to do the other one. I said, hey, that's no problem. I'll be glad to take it back to the board. We'll still recommend it. Our committee is what we'll do now from a committee standpoint is if she doesn't get us all the information, then we'll stop it altogether. I mean, it stops the event. If she doesn't get the information required to us, she can't have the event anyway. So we'll get together as a committee. There's 4 of us on the committee. We'll get together, go over her information. If she's got everything, let it roll on. But this board needs to give that approval. Kind of a little bit backwards, but it was just the way it happened on this one. So if you're okay
Do I
with
have
it,
a
somebody
motion?
make the motion to do that.
Got a motion from Alderman Thompson, second from Alderman Barrow. All in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous.
All right. And thank you. I'll let her know that y'all approved that. And sorry for the confusion on that. I was thinking one thing and she was thinking other. So we're good to go now. I don't have anything else tonight, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Swisher, you've turned your microphone off.
Yeah, Alderman Gordon said the 5th of Friday, so I'm not, her event might be on the 7th because I believe it's a Sunday, but I'll look and see.
Mr. Powell, other than the closed session, do you have anything else for us?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right, matters to be presented by the Mayor, Board of Aldermen. Mr. Thompson?
I've got one item I wanted to discuss, or at least that we think about moving forward, and it relates to the emergency COVID restrictions that we were allowing these restaurants downtown to have outdoor dining. And that's something that we had spoken about before COVID hit, trying to let these restaurants be able to have tables, what have you, outdoors, similar to you'd see in most other cities. I'd like to just throw out there that when those do change, I would like for us to revisit that to make that a more permanent ordinance or permanent part of our downtown area. So that's all I have.
Yeah, and Ed and I have been discussing that because we thought the state of emergency was coming to an end last month, but it didn't. So we're working on something to have on we're trying to have it on the May agenda for y'all's consideration. It's one of those things you said we did it as kind of a temporary thing, but it's worked really, really well. I know Follies utilizes the area right there beside that the town owns. KBC utilizes the area behind their place. So it has worked downtown. I know Fitz utilizes the area right there in front of their place for food as well. So it's worked well. I think it's worth drafting a permanent one to place on the May agenda. So, and hopefully the executive order won't end before we get it on the agenda, but who knows?
Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Barrow? Mr. Apple? Mr. Gorham? Mr. Penix? All right. Looks like we have a request to have a closed session. So if someone would like to make that motion. Okay.
Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged and pursuant to A5 regarding a contract concerning the purchase of real property.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Our meeting is now in closed session.